Hey everybody, welcome to an unexpected podcast. This is the second of probably three Ardacon recap episodes. The first one we did was actually during Ardacon. We are no longer at Ardacon. This is the Friday after Ardacon. We're in various places. Mick has returned home to London. Rob has returned home to DC. Evan and I are still on vacation. We're actually broadcasting recording from a hotel room in Galway, and Henry is joining us again, and Henry is in Leeds, who is still on vacation. So hello everybody.
Hello.
Such a sad time now.
Yeah,
it was such a great tournament.
We're in the post Ardacon letdown period, but
post Ardacon blues.
And I will say it was a little bit surreal to find out at Ardacon that some people actually listen to this podcast. So all of you who came up and said hello, it was lovely to meet all of you. Obviously, we can't shout out to everyone in person, but thanks for listening, and it was really great to actually meet some of you at Ardacon.
Hopefully that was great. Yeah, like I had a couple of games where like I would show up at the table and someone would be like, "Oh, are you Mick? Oh yeah, you're from the podcast. I recognize you. I recognize your voice. I'm a big fan." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's nice to hear."
We theorized earlier on that all of our significant others / family relations were actually just botting a bunch of accounts and then creating them. Podcast.
I mean, that is
they're all using
that is what Jen is doing. That's what.
I always thought Jen was our listener, so it's nice to realize that we're talking to somebody other than Jen.
So thank you for listening, and it was great to meet you all.
So I think where we left off was after, because we podcasted, I think on it was Thursday night. So I think we had gone through the invitational qualifier on Wednesday, and then the first day of Masters for Mick and Evan, and then for lowly me and Henry, who did not qualify for Masters, doubles. I think where we left off, Evan in the Masters was 3-0. Mick, where were you?
I was on the bottom table, having just lost to Jay Clare. Also on the bottom table.
It was some other combination of scores involving a 3 and a 0.
Can we talk about how good of a bottom table that is? Like, how good is the tournament when the bottom table is Mick versus Jay Clare, right?
Yeah, and like when I was losing to Jay Clare on Thursday night, like by basically 1 or 2 models for the entire game, no one would have predicted at that point what might happen later to Jay Clare.
Which we will certainly get to, I'm sure, in one of these episodes.
So after basically being at the very bottom, I think after that round, out of 18 players, I was ranked 16th or 17th, tied basically for last, and
there was somebody below you, Mick, and that's what's important.
Well,
that's right.
That's the thing. Like I was tied for last in tournament points, and I was winning on a tiebreaker, and therefore not being last.
You'll take it.
Yep.
So you're saying that the oath you took for Ardacon was not to be last?
Well, so the whole game against Evan, which I had at the start of the Masters, by not giving him more than 2 victory points, probably that meant I wasn't last. So where should we start?
About what Henry and I were doing in doubles. So, that's what I was saying. Nobody cares about what Henry and I were doing in doubles. We're going to tell you anyway. But we should, I guess, start with Evan and Mick on round 4. And Mick, everybody's waiting to hear what happened, how you clawed your way back from where you were in round 3. So why don't we start with you?
Well, so this was about to become a mighty return that then led all the way into an Ardacon charge. So in round 4 of the Masters tournament, I ended up playing against Ivan, who I believe was from Ireland, and he was playing an Ugluk Scouts Legendary Legion, and we played Assassination. So in this scenario, you pick a hero who is supposed to kill a hero from the other army, and you hope that that your hero also survives. So you had to do it in secret, and it just so happened that I picked Hurin to kill Mahur, and out of all of the heroes that he had, which I believe he had 4 Urka heroes, he actually picked Mahur to kill Hurin. So unbeknown to me, even though I was expecting him to pick someone else. So the game was very close again, just like all my other games at Ardacon. But I quite quickly managed to gain an advantage in shooting, thanks to my massive bow numbers. And once combat started, I managed to quickly kill his general, Ugluk. But I didn't know about this whole Mahur versus Hurin thing. And I actually got into a situation where I charged Hurin into the Mahur. And so had Hurin lost combat and died, I would have lost the game. But Hurin won combat and killed Mahur, and I won the game. Sometimes it comes just down to that. I mean, it was a really enjoyable game. I mean, he had like 50 models against my 40, so it felt very much like an old school, nice Lord of the Rings game without any major heroes. A lot of just grinding, a lot of shooting at each other, trying to kill as many people as possible. But yeah, it was really fun, and it turned out to be extremely close as well, because I think both of our armies broke at the end. Yeah, so that was the beginning of my comeback.
So I'm interested, Mick, what those 4 heroes were, because when you hear Mahur and Assassin in the same speech, you're probably a little bit confused, because him having fight 5 and no heroic strike does not seem like he's the optimal assassin.
So
I assume
his army was Warband 1 had Ugluk, then Warband 2 had Mahur, Warband 3 had Grishnak, and Warband 4 had Snaga. So Mahur was still better of those 3 choices.
Yeah, don't underestimate 3 attacks at strength 5. That's not nothing.
Although Grishnak, I believe, has heroic strike, so I was actually expecting Grishnak to be the hero that he would be using as an assassin.
Well, Grishnak also has, I believe, Backstabber, right? So he's actually a pretty sneaky hero killer if you can position right.
Yeah, so
put the trap on the hero, and then you're definitely taking him down. So
well, especially since the Legion, I believe, also gives you +1 for the animosity, right? So if you can put an Uruk in the combat, suddenly he's at +2 with a strike. So if I was going into the game, I would have expected Grishnak to be the assassin.
So like that's kind of what I was expecting, and so I was thinking, well, I'm just gonna send Hurin against Mahur, because if I strike, I can't really lose that combat unless I get super unlucky. So it seemed like a good choice for me. So it did surprise me, but yeah, at the end, I managed to get.
Turned out to be a great choice.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and one really surprising thing throughout the game, like the game was super fun and enjoyable, but there was this one moment where my opponent actually just started walking slower towards me, instead of moving at full speed at 8 inches a turn, and actually stopped in order to shoot, because he had like 14 bows with his Urkai scouts. And I just found it really strange, because I had like my 15 bows plus Legolas plus all my throwing spears. So it just seemed to me very much like if he stands and shoots, then I will win the shooting war quite easily. And that's sort of what happened. So then eventually he engaged, but it just became like a rabble against rabble, and I managed to win in the combat.
What was the bow numbers versus his bow numbers?
So
like, what was the maths behind it?
In general, it was he had 52 models against my 40, and he had, I believe, 14 or 15 bows against my 15, plus throwing spears plus Legolas.
Okay.
Yeah, there was even an instance where he called a heroic shot, I believe, and then I countered with my own heroic shot. So
yeah, Legolas tips that in your favor quite heavily.
Yeah, I mean they are still strength 3 bows, so they could have taken out some of my archers had they shot first, and then it was I guess possible if he was to win a heroic shoot off, that he would actually gain an advantage. But then yeah, Legolas just is too strong to fight in a shooting war.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
you
makes
had
sense.
what, Uruk-hai and then orcs, and I assume the Uruk-hai were marching under a drum. How did that work out? Did he end up getting his army into you at roughly the same time, or did the Uruk-hai charge ahead? And the
Well,
orcs...
so there was no drum in the list. It was Uruk-hai scouts moving at 8, and then orcs moving at 6. Then eventually Uruk-hai decided to slow down and move at 4 and shoot. That sort of allowed the orcs to catch up, and then we sort of joined into combat, and like everybody was pretty much in combat at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I assume the plan then was you move the Uruk-hai scouts up, and then you slow them down and move them half to shoot at you for the orcs to show up, so he can fight you at the same time. Maybe, I guess, is the plan.
Yeah, but then I don't know. There were a few turns where like I felt like his army was just standing together and not really progressing forward too much.
Mm-hmm.
So like the way I would have played, especially since there was a forest on my right flank and his Uruk-hai get woodland creature, I would have just abandoned all shooting. I would have just run forward and then really use the forest on my flank to like really like go around and then crush me. Because there were a few turns in combat where I was getting worried that actually I might break quicker than he will.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with this +1 bonus that they get. It was getting scary at times.
Yeah, if you're not going to win the shooting war, it doesn't make any sense to delay in the slightest.
Well, especially against Legolas and the amount of bows that you had, it just doesn't make any sense at all. And I mean, the Uruks, I mean, they might be a little tougher, but I assume that the orcs like had spears and stuff, so they were D4, right? So you were shooting them down.
Well, I was still aiming at Uruks with my strength 3 bows because they're defense 5.
Right, but with your strength 2 bows, I mean, you could have taken out orcs pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to aim at as much as I could at the Uruk-hai scouts because they were, I mean, at the Uruk-hai scouts with bows because they were defense 4 and strength 4. So I wanted to make sure that those guys don't get into combat and as many of them die before combat gets joined. Because like I was still in defense 6 in the front rank, so the orcs themselves I don't really care about them that much. But the Uruks, once they are supported by orcs, whenever they win the fight, the strength 4 is problematic. But as long as you shoot those archers, then there's less strength 4 to go around.
Yeah.
And so here I was on 1 win and 3 losses.
It's a start.
So Mick, for listeners who don't know this, he was just doing the ultimate submarine. He figured if he lost all the way to the bottom table, that he would have an easy competition to the table 1 for the next 3 games, right?
I mean, well,
he just didn't time it right. He just didn't time it right.
It was a Masters tournament. Every single game was super difficult, and every single game I
honestly,
very,
in
very
general, and we'll talk about this obviously over multiple episodes. I found that the quality of games at Ardacon in general were really high this year. Like I
have to agree.
Every single one of my games was an incredibly tight, difficult game against a really good opponent, and this was just even in the general GT. So I don't know if the world is getting better or if better people came or what, but it was really good. Anyway, continue.
Or maybe we're just really bad.
That could be. Yeah, it could be.
Maybe we just suck.
All right, so why don't we go to Evan game 4 here?
Yeah.
All right. So game 4 for me was also assassination. So this requires a very slight backstory. So I knew earlier on, because obviously this is the second day, so we'd all kind of, because there was only 18 people, we'd all kind of figured out who we were going to be playing on the top tables in round 4. And I realized I would be playing the Bears. And there were 3 scenario pools that were open. One of them was Maelstrom. The other one was the maneuvering scenario, so like reconnoiter, storm the camp, that sort of thing. And the third one was the unique scenarios. And basically what the unique scenarios are the hero killing ones, which would be Fog of War, Assassination, and there's another one in there. I can't remember.
Clash by Moonlight?
Yeah, Clash by
Yes.
Moonlight. That's and I was going to be slated very well against the Bears if I drew either the maneuvering scenarios or the Maelstrom scenarios because I had a ton more models than them, so I could grab the objectives and do pretty well. Unfortunately, that was not to be, and I drew what I would say is possibly the worst scenario for me out of all the scenarios, which is assassination. Which means that I need to figure out how to kill a very scary, nasty Grimbeorn, whilst also not being killed by the other bear, Beorn, at the same time. And also, he would probably be targeting Gulavhar as well. So if I played slightly too recklessly with Gulavhar and got him wounded or killed, well, that was that. I lose the game. So we ended up playing, it was quite an intense game because it always felt like, you know, if I mess one thing up, then he would get a wound on Gulavhar, kill Gulavhar, and then it would be a loss. I managed to drain through quite a bit of the Bears' might and will, but it wasn't enough for me to try and get any assassination or anything like that. Because there are two bears, not one, and then you can't transfix both of them at the same time. But basically what ended up happening is our armies killed each other's. We both broke. He got a couple of times where he had some shots within the ways on Gulavhar with his Beornings with bow. Luckily, he did not manage to score any wounds, which means I did not automatically lose. We both broke. All of my guys ran away. His guys weren't running away because they were much higher courage. But critically, both my Witch King and my Gulavhar were safe, and I just sort of ran them around the board until the random roll for the game ended up happening. Ended up being a 1-1 draw because we both broke each other and nothing else happened. During that game, there was a little bit of contention, I'd say. Just because he believed that I was playing a little bit slowly, which I think fair to him. I think I wasn't playing the fastest just because I had to think through a rather tough scenario, and obviously two big scary bears will make you move slower. But that was just a little bit of contention and ended up ending up fine because
I think it's
conclusion. So
I think it's easy as well for people with small model armies to lose sight of the fact that people are moving armies with twice, sometimes even 3 times as many models. So proportionately, they can lose sight of that. I've found that at times.
Also, there's a sort of scenario where, like, if you make a tiniest mistake, it's game over. So, like, did you actually go to time?
No, it came to a natural conclusion. We
Okay.
were like 30 seconds off, and the random roll happened.
Okay, I see. No, because I've had games in the past where, like, I would play very small armies, and literally like one turn would take 30 minutes because of how delicate every move was, and like if either player made a mistake, literally the game ended on turn 2. So yeah, so I can fully appreciate that, like, you have to take your time in these games. It's not the same as just like moving around 50 models against 50 models. That's actually pretty simple. It's these sort of games that really require your thought and you have to take your time to do that.
Yeah, I learned at that point to appreciate just how dangerous the bears actually were, because it felt like honestly there was nothing I could do at that points level to be able to stop them. I had like decent hero killing resources. I had Gulavhar and the Witch King and whatnot. I saw I think it was his game next round where he basically just sent the bears in on their own, and then left the all of the Beornings back, and the bears just murdered the entirety of his opponent's army.
Yeah.
It was impossible to stop.
Yeah.
The same thing happened during the first round. Remember when you and I were playing on one table, and next to us the bears were playing against Lake Down? Literally, the two bears went forward, destroyed the entire army, and the Beornings just sat back.
Sat back and watched and applauded.
And honestly, I actually noticed a good amount of bear armies on top tables in the Masters and the GT. Like bears were popular, so that alone tells you how people feel about how strong they are.
Looking at his results, he came 7th overall, which is for what you consider to be a one-trick pony army like the Bears is very impressive.
Well, but the thing is, when your trick is that good, the pony's very buff in this case.
Completely invincible, then I guess that works out.
This is like Bill the Pony on steroids level of trick. So,
I mean, you can't kill the Bears, right? Because they've got 3 wounds, 3 fate, defense 8, and 5 up fury.
Magic resistance.
So difficult to get rid of them.
How do you deal with
monstrous charge? Finally, like they're insane.
Nuke them from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Okay, so Henry, why don't we talk about round 4 of doubles?
Here
sure. It was Threndril and the Bears. It was.
More bears.
More bears. Yeah,
so this was Simon Roberts and Joseph Glasby, and they were playing an elven alliance of Haldir and a bunch of wood elves and some other. I think there were some other Galadrim in that mix
on the thing.
And then we were also he also had Elrond and a bunch of Rivendell Knights.
And I beg your pardon. Sorry, I've gotten the wrong game. Sorry.
And the scenario we were playing was Clash of Champions, where this is the one scenario where you can actually deploy your armies together if you want to in doubles, and they can actually support one another. You basically deploy both your armies on one half of your board, the other side deploys both their armies on their half of their board, and you come together and you try and kill each other's heroes. And you get points for I'm sorry, not heroes, but leaders. And you get points for killing the other side's leaders. You get points for breaking. You also get points for having your leaders kill their leaders. This is very much a kind of leader on leader fight. And the way they deployed is they first deployed Haldir and a bunch of his elves. Haldir and Rumiel, I think, was their other hero, and a bunch of their elves. Rumiel and kind of like a small battle line of elves, which were about half the elves, within 6 inches of the board edge, kind of on the left-hand side. Or I'm sorry,
made 0 sense.
6 inches within the deployment zone, so we could charge them first turn. And then they took the other half of their wood elves and put them up on one of these elevated Osgiliath terrain pieces as kind of like their base of fire. I think Haldir was kind of running around in the back with his bow. And then when they deployed the second half of their army, they kind of ignored the fact that you could deploy your army together and took Elrond and his Rivendell Knights and kind of stuck them somewhere in the middle of the board where they could shoot from there. And of course, Henry and I just took like all the Easterlings, put them into a 3-deep mob with heroes in front, and line them up opposite the elves, all set to charge first turn. Which
elves were these? Were these the Rivendell or the?
No, the Rivendell were like back in the center of the board, deep, kind of out of support range.
On the other side of the Osgiliath terrain.
Yeah, on the other side of the Osgiliath terrain. So there was basically, I think it was like a 6-wide battle line of elves that ended up.
And they were just the old school elves, weren't they? Wood elves, just the defense 3.
Oh, the defense 3. Whoa.
Yeah, it didn't make much sense. It was they were definitely the spears for the defense 3 guys, and they tried to shield wall.
There, they may have had some other guys, but yeah,
they were all dead by turn 2, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, they were all dead by turn 2. And then Haldir, who was in the back, who kind of like lost all his cover, was pursued into, and I think we got him with the Dragon Emperor kind of did a heroic combat and catapulted around and into Haldir and took Haldir down.
Oh.
And
was it that, or was it the Dragon Knight and the 2 cataphracts went up the back and the Dragon Emperor took down the Rumiel?
No, because Haldir was the leader, and we got the points for killing. We had to get the points for killing Haldir with. So we needed to get the Emperor into him to kill him. So the
That's
Emperor
right,
went in, we got the points for killing him, and then at that point, basically Elrond was looking at the wreckage of his ally at this point, and this was the second time we deployed the. And got him to charge through a doorway on one of those Asgiliath ruins into like our one spearman who was guarding that doorway, and promptly died, meaning that Elrond, went through the doorway, the defended position, onto the other side, and found himself staring at the Dragon Knight, Rutabi, and the Dragon Emperor, who were all kind of like arranged in an arc, waiting for him to come through. Jumped on him. And made fairly short work of him after we won the Elven Blade versus Elven Blade roll off, and then it was just a matter of killing a few more of their knights. So we ended up coming out of that one with 3-1, but at least we had it 1-0-2 loss, but then we had 3 12-0 wins at that point. So we were about as high as we could be on a 3-1. And that would take us up to, I think, table 2 for round 5. But before we get there, Mick, tell us about your trajectory.
So I was on my way back to the top tables. I was basically trying to take your example because you were leading by example there. And so I got to play in round 5 of the Masters. Scenario was Storm the Camp, which I personally, I so dislike the scenario, and many people do. But what actually happened was that it turned out to be probably the most enjoyable Storm the Camp game I've ever had in my life. Basically, I was playing against Sean Lang, who's a really, really good guy, and he was playing fiefdoms. He had 32 models in his army. It was Prince Imrahil leading some knights and men-at-arms. Duinhir leading some 8 Blackroot Vale archers, 6 of them with spears. Then Forlong leading some axemen, and Angbor the Fearless leading some clansmen of Lamedon. So from the start, we started walking towards each other. My shooting became super good in that after like by the time fighting started, I had killed like 7 or 8 models from bows. So I was outnumbering him like 40 to 25 or so. And I set up this sort of situation in the middle of the board. But basically, I split my army to be Erkan Brand going on the left flank with some Rohan, hoping to run into his camp through the archers. Then on the right flank, I had Legolas with a few guys, just Legolas trying to pick off various targets with his bow. And then in the middle, I basically created this solid line of fight value 5 supported, and Huron was somewhere at the back of it, hoping to get involved in fighting, and ideally with his heroic strike try to stop some enemies from breaking through. And so basically everything in this game comes down to this one turn. It was the very first turn of combat. I had positioned myself in such a way that Sean charged, I believe, 3 or 4 of my warriors just into 2-on-2s, and then he sent his Forlong mounted against two of my elves. And I'm not 100% sure if it was 2 of the elves or whether it was 2 Minas Tirith warriors supported by each other. But essentially, he was fighting against 4 guys, and he left a gap small enough that I was able to fit an infantry base. So in my movement, I decided to dismount Huron and actually put myself into that combat. So this way, I had a guy with a heroic strike. Obviously, Forlong can strike. I have 7 attacks at this stage. And so I was like, well, this is just perfect. Not only do I outnumber him very heavily, and my army is like slowly beginning to go towards his camp. Now he's going to lose at least his horse, possibly one of his major heroes. So I call my heroic strike. And what happens then is that I lose combat. Huron dies, and the other two guys also die. and he and he hasn't even spent a might point. And so,
that'll teach you to mess with the fat boy.
Well, Forlong is obviously big, and he was on a horse, so there's a lot of momentum there.
Yeah.
So by the laws of physics, like everything happened the way physics would expect it to happen. So Forlong then just like kept going and going and going, killing like 2 to 4 models per turn. In the end, we figured Forlong may have killed somewhere between like 12 or 15 models by himself.
My God.
It's not like he was higher fight value. He was equal fight value.
Yeah, he's fighting elves.
Yeah, and he was fight value 5 in this combat where I heroic strike. Basically, he rolled a 6, and then none of my elves or anybody there rolled a 6, and then Huron's highest roll was a 3. So I couldn't even might it up back to 6. I just needed a 4+ on my 2 dice with Huron. Yeah, so then suddenly once Forlong broke through that middle, then Imrahil joined, and then I believe I broke first, even though he needed to kill like 21 models to break me, and I only needed to kill like 8 or something like that. Then I still tried to go around and capture his camp with my Rohan guys, where Erkenbrand also like started messing up and failing to kill things, even though he was.
You keep saying Erkenbrand, you mean Theodred, right?
Oh, sorry, no.
Yeah, okay.
Theodred, yeah. And also,
or maybe that's why he wasn't killing anything.
Yeah, right.
Maybe,
exactly.
maybe. But then.
I guess I don't have a heroic strike. What am I going to
do? But like, I really wish it had been Erkenbrand at times, because there was a moment where I really wanted to like break away from my enemy's troops and run towards his camp, and then. The only model that was able to do it was actually Theodred, who then had to charge anyway. So regardless what I did, I just could not get to his camp. And then in the end, he broke me. He captured my camp, and I think by the end of the game, I broke him. So yeah, he won quite heavily. And yeah, by the end, it's like half of my army was either dead or running away.
You know, there are a few things you just don't hear every day, and one of them is, and then Forlong went through my entire army, right?
But this single turn,
I charged Forlong with my striker, and then he went through my army.
He was up against 7 dice. Not only did he win combat, he killed everybody in that combat, and it went through.
I feel like at this point Mick is just cursed, because every tournament you go to, you have basically what should be trademarked as a Mick moment, because last Ardacon it was a thing, right, where you charged Shelob, Gothmog into Gulavhar, struck Gothmog.
Both of them died that turn.
No. Oh, you hate to see it at this level.
Test on double ones and ran.
Yeah.
Oh, and did you have another one where you charged Zuladan and some other hero into them all? Zuladan. Maybe Mick, you should stop charging your heroes into other people's heroes.
I think Mick should just play one of those heroless armies at this point, right? Like Wozen.
Yeah, well, especially when it's like 90 to 95% chance of winning the combat. I should stop doing that and then losing my entire army and dying just on the spot.
Well, and what really makes this a comedy of errors is the fact you could have taken the camp if Theodred wasn't an idiot.
Yes. Exactly, yeah.
That's amazing. That's like the cherry on top, right?
You can throwing out every single one of your dice and then buying new ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, like I don't believe in such stuff. Although,
all right.
See, my blog is actually it's named Veni Vidi 11 because Julius Caesar said I came I saw, and I rolled a double one, and I failed to conquer.
And I fell off my horse into the river Rubicon, and I rolled a 1.
Yeah, that's a bit of a trivia there for you.
All right.
History's first Throne Rider 1.
Yeah. How did you do round 5, Evan?
Yeah, so it was storm the camp, like Mick said, and I drew the dreaded matchup. I could not escape him any longer. I was playing against Alistair King.
Condolences. Such a good player.
So Alistair, I think we've had him on the podcast.
We did, yeah.
We do the which episode did he do?
He was talking about the dwarves, yeah. I think Army of Thor or something like that.
Yeah, he loves dwarves.
Airborne Reclaimed.
He did not have dwarves this time around. This time around, he had Theodred's Guard, and he was absolutely on fire with them. I had heard stories throughout this entire tournament of him just shooting through every army. In the last round, he played against a lake town with blinding light, and he was just killing guys left, right, and center, and just absolutely crushed the army. I was terrified that he was going to do this to me as well. So storm the camp obviously takes a while. So the first couple of turns were just maneuvering. I was moving relatively fast. He was moving relatively fast, just so we could actually play the game. I learned very early on that maybe I shouldn't have been moving as fast as I was, as he sort of started laying the hammer down upon me, so to speak. He was obviously, I only had 2 very bad orc archers. He had about 9 bows and 50 trillion throwing spears, and he was using those to absolutely terrifying effect. He had 4 cavalry models. He sent 2 of them. One of those was Elfhelm down one side and 2 of them down the other side, and just delayed me for a long time as he was slowly marching his archers forward and just laying down a bunch of fire from them. I was able to get around, eventually kill Elfhelm and another rider, and then fly Gulavhar all the way to the other end of the board to deal with the absolutely obnoxious riders on the other corner of the board, because I knew that if I just charged straight forward into his archers, he'd kill a ton of my guys, and then we get in a long fight, and then his Elfhelm and his riders would just go galloping around to my camp, kill all the guys in the camp, and then take the camp. So I had to deal with the horses, even though my army was getting shot to pieces while doing it. And then I decided that I was just gonna try and go for a draw, because clearly if I tried to push forward, he would just shoot me to bits and win. So I pushed back a bit, but I had, in fact, even though I had killed all of the horses, the pressure from the archery was just incredibly suffocating. And I was decently close to breaking when at some point I was able to get Gulavhar around. He pushed one warband a little bit too far forward. I talked to him about this at the end of the game, and he basically said that he was bored and he didn't want to just shoot me the entire time. So he was moving much farther forward than he needed to. And he, unfortunately for him, that made him miscalculate, and it left a contingent over on my left side for Gulavhar to swoop in along with my guys and basically beat up that contingent. And I was also able to, he set up a line in the middle of the board. Gulavhar called a combat, killed 2 guys, swooped into that line and just hurled down the entire thing. Killed a couple of guys, knocked them all over. And then over the next couple of turns, we just had a big fight. So it ended up getting to the final turn where I was just, in those couple of turns, able to kill a ton of guys and break him. He obviously didn't have that many guys left to kill, so he broke me as well. But on the last turn of the game, I pushed the Witch King a little bit too far forward. and he was sort of surrounded by a couple of Rohan warriors. He ended up winning priority, getting a heroic move off with Grimbold, and then charging Grimbold into some guys near him, calling a combat where I also called a combat with Gulavhar to try and get a hurl through that fight to stop him, but his combat went first, and Grimbold went straight into the Witch King, which was basically his shot at getting the win, because if he kills the Witch King, he's fight 5, I'm fight 5. If he wins the fight and kills the Witch King, he wins the game. If I win the fight, it's a draw, because there's no way I'm getting any points out of him that way. Grimbold obviously isn't his leader. So basically the choice I was left with was 2 things. The Witch King would be fighting against a ton of dice on his own. Gulavhar could peel off a few guys, but he wasn't getting any hurls in because it was his priority. So I could either call a heroic strike, guarantee I had the higher fight value, and then hope I rolled a 6, or I could save the might point to try and might up my dual roll to try and force a roll off. I decided to save my might point, and it ended up not mattering, because when that combat rolled around, he gloriously only rolled a 4 highest out of his, I think, 7 dice, and the Witch King rolled a flat 6 and 1. So it ended up, we both broke each other. Nobody got the camp. Nobody got the leader kills. Theodred, by the way, was just sitting in the literal back corner of the camp the entire game. So there was absolutely no way I
Hold
could
me
touch
back,
him.
boys. Hold me back.
He was just sitting there. And
He's so much more valuable as the bodyguard engine at that point, right? Like we've talked about this before with some other armies.
Yeah, for sure. So it ended up being a very, very well fought 1-1 draw. And
Nice.
I gotta say, Alistair, you were a lovely guy. You were a great opponent. I do not want to play you again, because it was so good. It was rough.
Yeah.
But we ended up coming through with a second draw. So.
I like how you say that at some point he just said that he was bored, and yet he almost won anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I could have moved back a bit more and just kept shooting you, and I might have broken you, but that would have been a bit of a boring game. And
I wanted to give you a sporting.
Yeah. I mean, we take those, I guess.
Yeah.
Good. So for doubles round 5, Henry and I, and I'll let you talk through this one, Henry. Let me just kind of set the scene here. We were playing Marius and Kenneth from, I believe it was the Netherlands. Is my memory right on that, Henry?
Kenny was from Norway, as I found out later on. So I think they were Scandinavian.
Okay. So this was another this was our second international team, and we were playing them in doubles scenario 3, which is take and hold, which is basically it's hold ground in doubles, where each member of the alliance starts on an opposite corner of the board, and then you try and run to the center and outnumber your opponent in the center. We were playing against their army, which was Boromir and some friends, and then Faramir and
Madril. Yeah.
On the other side, and they're coming together. So I'll let you talk through this one,
Henry. So this was an interesting one. They were both great guys. So the way it was deployed was that the Dragon Emperor, because we had deployment priority, we gave the easiest channel to the center of the board to Matt's half of the army with Dragon Emperor, because this was one of those games where because it's Minas Tirith versus Eastlings, it's whoever gets to the center first wins the game. But they had March on their left flank, and it was too difficult for the drummer to get into the center to drum my half of the army. So we got to an interesting point where the objective had a paddock on one side. So that was obviously added a defensive bonus to whoever got it first. And then there was buildings on either side towards Matt's end of the board. We got to an interesting position where I moved my Dragon Knight, my 2 cataphracts, into the middle of the paddock. This was one of the situations where cavalry could move over fences, which allowed me to threaten his infantry block coming up on the Madril Faramir flank. That was designed to weather any shots that came through. I didn't care if they were dehorsed. It was designed to just stop them from rushing into the center. Boromir was coming up the other flank, so we had this interesting situation. It was Dragon Emperor was probably the closest to the middle and had the terrain on either side. And then there was a narrow channel on the other side of the paddock for them to get through. They won the priority roll, which was an excellent thing. I think Matt can agree for us, because it meant they had to move first. And it would mean that Boromir, if he decided to move in, would be against our two sides, our two forces in the open, whilst we had the paddock to hold off his other side of the army. And I was expecting him to go after my infantry with Boromir and move his infantry in to block off the Dragon Emperor. Buy a few turns, just try to fight his way in. He went deep. He did, and it brought back some uncomfortable memories. He charged his Boromir right into the Dragon Emperor, turn 1, when we had the counter move. And that's what I did, if you remember, in my last chance masters game, and it got Boromir killed a turn or so later. Mm-hmm. So Matt actually said to me, he goes, "Do you know how we kill Boromir?" And I thought to myself, I know how we kill Boromir. And it didn't require a chicken. I was expecting Matt to have to go to get Boromir to come in. But no,
it occurred to me that they were going to try that, frankly.
Mm-hmm. He did it of his own volition. And I think that turn we killed Boromir. And it was basically our game from that point on. We blocked off in a single turn, 5 point, six might Boromir basically, except for the strike. And we basically blocked off the objective and won that game 12-0. So that was honestly the long and short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it ended up being Boromir fighting the Dragon Emperor on one side, and then Henry brought the Dragon Knight in from behind on the other side, and then 2 files of pikes came in from both the left and the right. So it was, we got where we needed to go. I can't remember if he didn't roll. I think he may not have rolled up to the 10 on the heroic strike.
No, he did. We won the roll off. Mm-hmm. That was all it came down to, was the roll off.
Did he have a banner or did he have a lance?
Had the banner. Had he had a lance, he might have won.
Well, yeah, of course.
Well, as somebody who played Boromir with banner in this tournament and came up against the Dragon Emperor, that is literally the last thing I wanted to do the entire game, unless it was my Hail Mary, because you win that fight, you don't do anything. You lose that fight, and God forbid they got Blade Wrath off, then your horse is definitely dead, and you're probably dead, right? So,
I think we actually combated off him, Matt. Because I remember the dragon knight. Yeah, it was worth the point of mine.
I think you may be right. I can't.
Yeah, because the Dragon Knight got back 3 points of might that game because of Blood and Glory. Because I remember you said to me, "Oh, why hasn't the Dragon Knight gotten any Blood and Glory this tournament?" And then I got 3 that game.
Yeah. I can't remember if we would have combated off of him or not. We may actually have double struck. I can't remember at this point.
That's it. Yeah, and he got his might back. So we gave the kill to the Dragon Knight. Yeah. That was right.
So his charge was it basically just Boromir, and then you guys just like surrounded him entirely, and like Dragon Emperor had like 6 strikes on his own with like 20 other strikes.
Yeah, infantry didn't have the movement to get into the center, and we still had the Dragon Knight and the 2 cataphracts in the middle, if you remember.
Right.
So it was a simple move to just put him in.
So then Boromir also lost his charge bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he would have.
Right. So
no. Boromir had his. Oh no, he did. Yeah, you're right.
Well, he wouldn't have anyway because he can't knock over the Dragon Emperor even if he wins. So he would get his extra attack, right? But nothing else.
He would get his extra attack.
But he doesn't have a lance, so he's wounding on 6s, right? Or is it 5s? Is it D6 for the Dragon Emperor?
Well, what does it matter anyway?
Well, what does it matter? Yeah, I mean, even let's say like you get all 4 wounds off of that, and you put it at the palanquin, and if the idea was to knock him off the palanquin, you can't even do that because he doesn't have enough attacks to do it without the knockdown.
I think he admitted later on that it wasn't the right call. But do cavalry, when they get countercharged, I don't think you do keep the extra attack. I think you just keep lance.
No, the cavalry would take away the extra attack. I'm saying even if it was just the Dragon Emperor, because you can't knock him down, you're still only getting the benefit of an extra attack, right?
Yeah.
So I think the problem was that we had essentially gotten to the. So we had gotten to the center and we had basically screened off the Faramir Madril force. So I think he figured he had to like go big or go home with Boromir, and he tried to go big and ended up going home.
Also, I think from the theme perspective, it made sense that Boromir died because Faramir was there. So maybe that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
I bet at that moment he wished that Faramir had died and Boromir had lived. Yes, I wish that, say they.
I wish that said the player controlling Boromir.
And Denethor was also in the army.
So we thought this game wasn't going to matter because we were on table 2 and sitting on table 1 were the other Dutch team that we had lost to. And we knew we couldn't play them again. So as long as they sat on table 1, we were stuck and we were out of it. But we actually got lucky and they actually lost their game 5. So they kicked down table 1. We were able to go back up we were able to get up to table 1 for our showdown there for game 6. But before we do that, we have Mick's the thrilling conclusion of Mick's Masters.
So this is where the comeback really was about to begin, because previously, like round 4 was just a warm up for the submarining. Round 6 is where the submarining begins. So I was playing against Joachim, who was Evan's opponent in the qualifiers for the Masters, and he finished second in the qualifiers. So he played this really cool list with Witch King on Felbeast, with Crown, Gulavhar, an Orc Captain on a Warg, and a total of 31 models. And the scenario for this one was Command the Battlefield. So as it's a Maelstrom scenario, many different things can happen. So I won priority on the first turn, and unfortunately, the way I rolled my dice was that basically Legolas and his elf warband got put in the middle of the left side corner. In the middle of the left side of the board. Then my Huron and his guys got put into the top right corner, and then Theodred and his guys rolled a 2, which I decided to might down into a 1. Instead of mighting it up to a 4 and bringing it close to someone, because I figured wherever he goes, I can then maybe countercharge with Theodred next turn, and it will give me more of a game. If, let's say, if I was to put Theodred close to Legolas, then my Huron warband dies. If I put them next to Huron, then my Legolas warband dies. So that seemed like the best move. So then, what happened for him was that both Gulavhar and Witch King's warbands, which contained 14 orcs and a spectre, they deployed in the top right corner, and his captain deployed in the bottom right corner. So it seemed like I'm probably going to lose my top right corner warband with Huron, and then he will start going into other places, and we're going to have like a board-wide battle. So instead, what ended up happening is that in the very in like the second turn of the game, Gulavhar went in for his glorious charge, fluffed his dice roll against my 2 warriors of Minas Tirith, who were supported by spears, and took 3 wounds, just like Gulavhar, just like Gulavhar often does. Which luckily meant that he was less of a threat for the remainder of the game.
He needs to learn from me, where my Gulavhar just simply doesn't do that. And then he should be okay.
Oof.
Yeah, so I then that meant that his Witch King on Felbeast, he initially had him in the top right corner, but once that whole thing happened, like I actually deployed my Theodred's warband to go after his smaller warband with the orc captain and just 10 orcs and a spectre in the bottom right. So I sort of forced a situation where either his bottom right corner warband would die and my top right would die, or he would send his Witch King to help his bottom right warband and save them from Theodred. That obviously meant that Gulavhar was kind of being left by himself. So he ended up getting into a situation where he split off the Witch King. He went to help his other warband. That warband almost entirely died very quickly because I had all the throwing spears and my charges and Theodred there. and the Witch King was kind of stuck, sort of in the middle, in between the warbands. He then got into combat. He killed a few things, but in the meantime, basically, with Gulavhar on just one wound, my game plan was for Legolas to run as fast as possible across that entire board in order to fire that one shot at Gulavhar. But before I managed to do that, Gulavhar still lost another combat and died anyway. So, so that was quite lucky for me, because basically, we after the game finished, we were both like I thought he was gonna win from the moment I deployed, and then he said that he was convinced 100% that he was gonna win, because he had both Gulavhar and the Witch King of Felbeast and like 15 orcs fighting against my one warband. So sort of a reverse situation from game 5 happened, whereas in game 5 I shouldn't have lost. In this one I shouldn't have won. Yeah, and then my elves managed to get more into the center, then split off. Then Legolas was trying to fire a shot here and a shot there, and I slowly managed to use my numerical advantage to take over the board. And I believe I must have won something like 10-1 or something like that. It was
nice.
Maybe not 10, more like a 7-2 or something like that. So yeah, it was a really cool and like really close game. But had Gulavhar not lost his first combat, I would have just been completely destroyed. But stuff happens.
But stuff happens.
Stuff happens, and
I actually think that
I managed not to die.
The story of my entire GT experience, and we're going to cover that in another episode, is stuff happens. So yeah.
So my tournament ended with 2 wins and 4 losses. Which considering the opponents I was playing against, that was actually really pretty good.
Yeah. Look, you played good games. You got lucky here, you got unlucky there, and and you had fun. So
I have to say, all of my games were super enjoyable. All of my opponents were great, and yeah, I just had a really good time. And they were all really close games, except the one with Evan, which I just couldn't win. But it was still enjoyable.
I try to make my games as unenjoyable as possible, so I guess I failed in that respect.
That way he scares off opponents.
Yeah. The goal is that next time I play my opponent, they'll just be so dreading the unpleasant experience that they'll just concede, and then I'll get the win for free. Hasn't worked yet, but maybe one day. All right. So
game 6.
Yeah. Game 6. So game 6 was on table 2 against which was Assault upon Helms Deep.
Hey.
Which is obviously a nightmare. Because ballistas, basically. Ballistas and only ballistas. They are so annoyingly accurate. They reroll to hits, they reroll scatters, they've got a might point, and if they hit Gulavhar, they kill him. And that's that. There goes 200 points out of my 650 points. And then when I get into combat, I assume he's also decimated me with crossbows at this point. He then kills me with his Fightful Urukai. Luckily, this was Command the Battlefield, which was Maelstrom, which means none of that happened. And basically what happened instead was that his assault ballistas picked a board half to deploy on. I then spent not an unreasonable amount of might to end up on that board edge as well. I think it was like only like 2 might, which for me obviously isn't ideal because I've only got 8 might, but it's also not the end of the world in order to immediately just jump on his assault ballistas and just start attacking. So I ended up being able to disable one of the ballistas fairly quickly and then disable the other one quickly as well. they really didn't do that much damage to me. They weren't able to get Gulavhar or the Witch King or anything like that. They just killed a couple of guys with their blast through shots. And basically what ended up happening after that was both of his warbands deployed in a corner near his ballista that was destroyed last. And they were actually situated behind a very convenient / inconvenient fenced off area, which meant two things. It meant one, he could set up his crossbows in that nice area and basically just throw a ton of shots at me. But it also meant that it was very hard for him to get out of that corner of the board, meaning that I basically had half of the board, that being a left half, entirely uncontested, where I could take those two objectives. And basically his plan from the get-go was to get the corner of the board that he was in, double, get the corner that he could actually effectively move in, which was the upper right-hand corner of the board, double as well, and then break me and get the win that way. And it ended up, it started off going pretty well for him. He got a couple of kills with his Urukai. I was taking a long time to chop through his troops. But he didn't kill Gulavhar with the assault ballistas. And then Gulavhar got in, and the Witch King got in. And they basically just started chomping on his small flank because of a similar reason. Because of that fence being there, he wasn't able to get his army to bear against me. So it was basically just a small opening where the Witch King and Gulavhar were chomping down. And basically a bunch of his crossbows just trying to shoot into Gulavhar's combat, and either kill the guys Gulavhar was fighting, and then eventually try and chip wounds off of him. The problem was he wasn't super great at wounding Gulavhar, and he was even worse at wounding his own models. So I don't think he killed a single one of his own models the entire time, and he did chip a couple of wounds off of Gulavhar, but Gulavhar would just eat the models and get them right back. I think by the end of the game, Gulavhar had killed something like 15, 16 models. The Witch King had killed like 6. I probably got like 3 or 4 kills maybe from my normal orc warriors. The rest of them were just Gulavhar and the Witch King just slowly munching down that side of the board and killing all of his guys. He sent a captain's contingent out to the upper right-hand side of the board to try and salvage some points. But unfortunately for him, it was too late at that point. I had done too much damage. And there was really just nothing he could do about Gulavhar because he did not have the bomb, which was another big thing. He had the ballistas, he did not have the bomb, so he couldn't simply throw the bomb and blow up Gulavhar. I think honestly, if he did have the bomb, it would have been a totally different game. I would have to play very, very carefully in order not to just get my big scary 200-point model blown up. But because he didn't have it after I took out the siege bows, there unfortunately for him wasn't much for him to do. You mean the assault ballistas, which are very different from siege bows. Yeah, if there were orc siege bows, I would have just completely ignored them. But these were assault ballistas, so I took them out immediately. So I don't remember the exact points I got in that game, but I definitely got the left 2 corners of the board double. I definitely got the bottom right corner of the board, which is where he originally deployed because Gulavhar and the Witch King just went to town over there. Didn't touch his leader because he was at the other end of the board, but I broke him. So I think it was like 8 or 9 to like 2, maybe something like that. Yeah, so I ended Masters on 4 wins and 2 draws. Which I learned afterwards that 2 draws is unfortunately slightly less than a win and a loss, as I ended up with 24 total tournament points, which put me in 2nd place. Yeah, so the person in 1st place, I believe his name is Antonio Sentinello. He was on 5 wins and a loss. He actually did the ultimate submarine. He put all of you guys to shame, where he lost the first game quite convincingly, but he just stormed through everybody else and managed to win the tournament.
So he did it right, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, right.
So he had a really interesting list too. I asked him about it afterwards. So he took a Gulavhar. He had a Dalamir. He had a Witch King without a crown but on a Fell Beast.
Yeah.
And and a Mouth of Sauron. And I asked him about this choice of no crown, and he said it's just like a complete mistake. Like it was his first time using the tourney system, and he just didn't type things correctly, and then he was confused why the numbers are coming up incorrectly, and he's like, okay, fine, let's just submit it. And then he played, and he realized in the game that like, oh yeah, there's no crown.
But that's also the ultimate flex, isn't it? I forgot to add the crown and still won.
I forgot the best thing about my biggest character. And
by the way, I also had the Mouth of Sauron in my army, so you know.
Yeah. But the Dalamir option was really cool because initially I was like, oh, that's strange. Why would you play Dalamir with some new Black Numenorians with no Crusaders or anything like that? And then he said the thing about the smoke bombs, how basically Mouth of Sauron would be transfixing things, Witch King would be transfixing things, and if everything fails, then Dalamir walks in, throws his smoke bombs, and it's a channel transfix, and then kills things. So yeah, that was a cool combo. But the whole thing with the crown was just just to basically make fun of everybody else.
Yeah.
That's always the problem with Dalamir, right? Is he's always, if you're playing a pure Corsair list, there's no ring race in there.
Yeah.
So he's got a smoke bomb and he throws it at somebody, and they're like, that point of will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this in the Corsair list, the smoke bombs practically don't exist. Like
Right.
in some points, you'd even want to throw the throwing weapon instead, just
Which
to
I've
have
done.
a
Which
higher
I've
chance.
done.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Like smoke bombs are so rare. Like if you're playing against a Mordor troll, you're gonna throw a smoke bomb. But against pretty much any other hero, you'll never be successful with it, unless you have those ring rates.
Very clever.
Yeah,
and clearly it worked.
Yep. So looks like Matt and Evan have frozen, so Henry might have to take all the glory.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to carry this last round, am I?
All the credit and all the glory.
Game 6.
Game 6. Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm just gonna refresh which one it was. I remember this game.
Right.
This was an interesting one. Are you back, Matt? No, okay, they're out. All right, I'll go through with it. So we're up against Thorin leading Iron Hills Dwarves, the tough boys, and against Thranduil. Now it's the scenario where both leaders.
Oh, he might be back. Hold on. Should we give them like a minute to try to reconnect?
Sure.
Yeah,
So-
sure.
Sorry.
I'm sure they can cut it out in the editing.
Yeah.
I think this is the game that when I was walking through, I got to see a little bit of what you guys were playing.
Yes.
Yeah,
I met you at the end.
Yeah, looked like a good game. So,
Okay,
it looks like Matt and Evan have left,
Completely gone now.
but they should be back shortly, I imagine. Mick, it's been really fun watching since you started recording. Like it was daytime outside, and we've just watched this like London sunset in real time in the background.
I'm the same. It's not outside.
Oh, yeah.
Now too, and
It's
late.
not-
Literally, I've been
outside.
watching the sun go down behind you. So thank you for the scenic view.
Yeah.
Hey
Oh, yeah,
guys,
you're
we're back.
We
Yeah.
were just getting on to game 6.
Right, game 6.
Yeah, I hope any of our panicked rambling didn't interrupt.
No, we couldn't hear a
interrupt
thing.
anything
So
you
you're
guys
good
were
to go.
saying.
I assume you could just cut it out in editing too if you need to.
Maybe not
Or
perfect,
not.
but
Oh no, you see, we don't really edit.
No,
Uh,
we're a reality show, unfiltered.
It's raw.
yeah. You used a word that we're not familiar with. So Henry, I don't have my phone anymore. So can you go through the details of game 6 if you haven't done that already?
I can. So it was our list against Thorin leading the Iron Hills Dwarves with a banner, and Thranduil leading Palace Guards. It was the scenario where the two leaders have to deploy in the middle, and then you have Maelstrom deployment for the others, and then you've got 5 objectives. I'm not familiar with what it's called, but I'm sure for those who are familiar with the double scenarios, you can visualize it. So when it came down, it was a line of Palace Guards with Thranduil at the back versus Matt's Dragon Emperor Warband. And Matt looked at me and said, I don't want to fight that. And I said, fair enough, that seems logical. So turn 1, we won priority, and Matt drummed the Dragon Emperor back. Now, if you're thinking about the deployment, it's basically open field, a bit of terrain on the right-hand side, it's like an Osgiliath ruins terrain where it's all one piece. It's got the 2 pieces, and you can sort of make a little defensive block out of it. And then on the other flank, you've got more Osgiliath terrain, but a big open bit in the middle. So Matt marched back and used the terrain as so that Thranduil couldn't charge straight. So basically, he'd have to come down and around the building to get to Matt. Simple enough. And there were objectives basically in the form of a dice 5 face. My warband came on to the south. So basically, Matt's warband think about Matt's warband as sort of being slightly bottom left, Thranduil being still sitting in the middle, and then my warband comes on from underneath. So I sent some warriors immediately to go take the ruins to the right of Thranduil, and Thorin's warband rolled a 1, I believe, to come on. So I had a bit of an advantage there. And the idea was for my 4 warriors, to go and draw half of Thranduil's warband off as a bait, and then hopefully Thranduil and his guys would follow the Dragon Emperor. In the end, he took the bait, but he didn't send Thranduil into the Dragon Emperor. They sat around the middle. I started moving towards Thranduil in the middle when Thorin and a whole lot of Iron Hills dwarves came on right behind me. So I had to use a point of might to form up and get out of their charge range, because interestingly, both of their armies individually can beat both of our halves of our armies. So it became a game of splitting up, taking the objectives, whilst trying to choose where it is that we wanted to fight. And Matt, if you want to jump in here at any point, let me know. But basically, the Dragon Emperor formed up with the ruins that I described earlier as our back. So we were sort of up against them, but we were far away from the Iron Hills dwarves. And because of the drum getting to me, my half of the army, I was able to drum right up into Thranduil's face, whilst half his warband was failing to kill 4 Eastling warriors in the objective. So we were on half of Thranduil's army with our entire army for a good 2 turns. And basically our goal was kill his warriors, take the objectives, and then deal with Thorin later. And as it turned out, that worked out pretty well. We basically left Thranduil to do his own thing because he was on foot. He was just facing down big pike blocks that were 3 deep. He might have been killing a warrior 2 per turn, but who cares? We were ripping through his troops. And eventually it became just a delaying game against his dwarves. And we had all the objectives. And I believe we killed enough of the elves to break him. But I think this game went to time in the end. And it ended up being a Thorin getting ganged up on by a Ratabi and a Dragon Emperor whilst pinning his warriors. And then the Dragon Emperor and Ratabi moving on to Thranduil. And then time, and we sat on all the objectives, except for maybe 1, I believe. So Matt, you might be able to fill in some of the gaps there if you're still with us. But I believe that was a summarization of our games, and that came out as 4 12-0s, 1 8-1, and 1 2-0 loss. So
yeah,
how do they do, Matt?
About right. I mean, yeah, I think that's about right. I think there was one objective. I think they had one. They may have had one objective that they had more guys on, and that was our diversionary objective. And yep. I think they were also trying to hang on to the central objective. But on the last turn, we did the Emperor dump and dismounted the Emperor. Guys put 6 guys on the ground and went and took that one too. So
I've got to remember that move. That's a great move. Yeah,
I had that happen to me in one of my games too, and I was like, it's not that it was unexpected, but it was kind of unexpected, right? So
I didn't expect it. When he did it, I was like, that's genius.
Yeah.
So we ended up and I guess the other thing that was amusing about this game was at the beginning of the game, these guys who were, I think at that point they're on 5 wins and 0 losses, and we were on
4 wins,
4 wins Yeah, they offered they chivalrously offered us a draw at the beginning of the game. Henry and I were like, let me think. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And played through. And unfortunately, we were sitting on at that point 4 12-0s and then a 0-2 loss. So we knew, basically all we had to do was beat these guys. It didn't really matter by what score, and we were able to take it. So fortunately, we were able.
So you guys were second when the round was starting.
Yes,
I believe so.
Sure.
Playing against first, yeah.
Well, and at the end of that game, what happened?
We got the dub.
Woo!
Yay.
They got the dubs. Took it home.
Very interesting draw offer, because if you drew, you
Yeah.
for sure would not even podium.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't even podium if you drew, because I assume there was a lot of people on 5 and 1. At the end of the day.
I think that there were.
And obviously
We had the biggest margin. We just needed that. We just needed 5 wins, 1 loss, and then we
Wait.
would have the margin.
Right.
Yeah, with like was it like 44 teams or 48 teams or something like that? There would have definitely been there would have been like 3 teams on 5-1s, I think.
Yeah, it was something like that. I think the next 2 tables down below us had 5-1 5-1s on them.
Yeah, so it's like a draw to you would be pushing yourself off the podium.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be just as good as a loss, basically.
But maybe that was the point. Maybe it was like psychological warfare where they hoped you wouldn't notice that, right? And fall for it. Like, oh, that's easy. Done, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
but fortunately both Henry and I passed rudimentary math, so we declined that offer.
Yes. Yes.
But
was that our second game to go to time, I think, though? We managed to finish every other game 45 minutes early, except for that one, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was the second game that went to time. Because that one definitely did. Yeah. So okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's second place in the first place. We just need a third place and a team win.
Well, thank you everybody for joining in for what is part 2 of our Ardacon series here on an Unexpected Podcast. We have now covered the Masters qualifier, the Masters proper, and the doubles. So now that leaves the GT. And for that, we've got a lot of games because all 4 of us played in the GT. So we are going to have a couple more episodes yet to kind of go through all of those games a little more in depth. And so stay tuned. Thanks for joining us as always. Like I said, it was really nice to meet so many of you at Ardacon. We're already having all of the post-tournament blues. At least I am, definitely. And we will see you here next time. Thanks so much.
Oh, and by the way, just a big shout out to James. Thanks very much for organizing an amazing event. Yeah, and to all the staff, Sam and Nick, wonderful. PMG, all of them. You guys really make that run so seamlessly. So so absolutely that. Yeah. All right. Yep. See you next time.
Bye-bye.